Disowned daughter passed away from stress, by user small_fly8042. So my mother has been and continues to make my life less than enjoyable. One particular thing I want to get off my chest is what happened when I was 12. I have had twin sisters who were 15 at the time. Their names are Sarah and Bess. Our mom left our dad to be with a total dici. This man would buy food and put his name on it so we couldn't eat it. He grabbed me by my neck for walking out of the kitchen with food in my mouth. Called us horrible names. All the whole time my mom knew, obviously. We were never allowed to tell our father what was happening. Our mom would tell us what happens in my house stays in my house, your dad doesn't need to know and you better not tell him. One night, Bess had enough of Dick, and called our dad. My mom listened in on another phone, back in the good old 90s, after she heard Bess confiding in our dad about what was going on, my mom was furious. She told Bess she was no longer her daughter. Told her the sight of her face made her sick. Banished her to her room completely besides using the toilet. This went on for about 1 to 2 weeks. Well, all the stress from everything triggered a heart condition we did not know Bess had to flare up and she actually went into cardiac arrest one morning and died. Dead at 15. My mom will never admit to the past. Has never made things right. Acts as if it never happened. I recently went NC with her. If you read another of my posts you'll see why. I have never healed from this. My mother lied and ruined my entire childhood, by user glittering mind 7495. My mother was angry with my dad because he didn't want me to stay with her when she was drinking and doing drugs and generally being unstable. So she lied to CPS and said that he was molesting me. They did an investigation in mine and my dad's county and concluded it wasn't true. But she had manipulated CPS in her county and they believed her, so they told her to have me visit her and they took me while I was there. They refused to listen to my dad and CPS in his county, who said they hadn't found any evidence and that they weren't allowed to take me as I didn't live in that county, but they refused to listen and placed me in a foster home that abused me for years. She ruined my entire childhood just because she wanted to beat him and be better. She never cared about me, she just didn't want him to be happy and didn't mind me getting hurt in the crossfire. My mother died 4 years ago. I haven't had any contact with my dad for many years. I just got all my documents from CPS and requested the documents from CPS in that other county as well. Turns out she lied. I've always thought I was molested, but never really felt anything towards it. It wasn't something that affected me. Now I know that's because it never happened. I made contact with my father and heard his side of the story and all the holes in the story makes sense now. I'm pissed that I was robbed of a normal childhood. My dad is super sweet and said that he tried to fight it for years and became really broken. While I grew up believing no one wanted me or loved me. We've decided to keep in contact and try to move forward. Made up a bloody and gory story to get an entitled mother and her child to leave me alone about my skin condition, by usermancanon21. Backstory: for the last few years I am, 29, have been developing vitiligo all over my body which has become very noticeable on my hands. For those that do not know, vitiligo is a skin condition in which white blood cells attack the melanin, pigment, in your skin causing the loss of skin color. I have natural tan skin that has resulted in white patches to form all over my hands that are very noticeable. My family, mostly my brother and dad, has mocked me for this skin condition on multiple times. As a result, I have become self-conscious of my white spots and started to wear tattoo concealer to cover it up. The other day, I was heading out to work and forgot to put on the concealer. One of the places that I go to is my local coffee shop before heading into work. As I was in line, a kid, probably about 9 to 10, came up to me and proceeded to say, "You, what is wrong with your hands?" I ignored them at first because I found it rude. While they were a child, I was always raised from a young age by my mom to never stare, point, or criticize people's conditions. Especially since we never know how they may have gotten them. After ignoring them, they then asked me again, "What is wrong with my hands?" I relented and told them that I was uncomfortable talking about it and to please not ask me again, and proceeded to turn back around. I know that I could have used this as an education moment, but I do not feel that it is my responsibility to educate others on how to be decent human beings, or about my skin condition. The kid did not like my response, and it was at this point the child's mothers got involved. Dear reader, let me tell you what. I have always thought these stories of entitled parents and rude people we exaggerated, and that no one could be this oblivious, but after this interaction, my opinion of these stores have changed. She got my attention with that dreaded "excuse me" phrase, and I knew I was in for a ride. The interaction went as followed. My child asked you what was wrong with your hands, the least you could do is tell them what happened. Me, ma'am, I am not comfortable talking about it, I do not need to tell your child anything. Well, why not? If you did not want people to ask about your deformity, then you should wear a glove. Now I will ask again, what is wrong with your hand? It was at this point that I saw red. However, keeping my emotions in check, I calmly said. I was in a terrible accident in which my hand was mangled. It was mangled so badly that I almost lost my hand altogether. Each white spot that you see is a scar from where bone, blood, muscle, tendons etc. were on the outside of my hand. I lost lots of blood and almost died from the accident. I was lucky enough that my hand was saved, but it left me with scars. While this was all fabricated on the spot, I felt that being as graphic as I could would maybe teach her and her spawn a lesson in leaving people alone, especially after they already told you that they did not feel comfortable in talking about it in the first place. She honestly clutched her imaginary pearls as I was accounting the story, and by the time I was done she was white in the face. She then grabbed her child and left the line quickly. I didn't know having twins meant this, by user BurgerBuns108. For some context. I'm a bouncer at a bar in a beach town. Our rule is that we have to ID every single person who wants to come in, whether you're freshly 21 or 80 and wrinkly, it does not matter. We have a system to scan the ID and it tells us basic information, name, job, how many people are scanned, if ID is valid etc. It will also tell me if your ID is expired, see valid, which is important. This group of about 6 people come up to me and I ask them for their IDs to scan. Everyone is good except this one woman, who's about 30 ish, well her ID expired over 200 days ago, making it not a valid ID. I simply explain that to her and this is roughly how the conversation went, her giving me attitude. Me, I'm just letting you know your ID is expired and has been for over 200 days, so if I were you I'd get that fixed. Okay, I have twins so it's not like I'm under 21. Me, it's not about age, it's about security. I'm just letting you know it's expired. Okay, that shouldn't matter because I have twins. Me, that doesn't mean anything. Technically this isn't a valid form of ID and I don't have to let you in. Oh, so I can't come in now. Me, since it's not busy I'll let you in. But you need to get your ID renewed, if you get pulled over by the cops and show them that they won't be too happy. Will I have twins so I don't even drive anyways, rolls her eyes and walks off inside. As we went back and forth, what I assuming was her husband was telling her to just say thank you instead of arguing with me. I got second-hand embarrassment from them. I'm sorry, poor husband. Just because you have kids doesn't make you exempt from the rules everyone else has to follow, and I tried to accommodate. Demands my deaf employee apologize for ignoring her, by use unexpected anxiety cat. For reference, I've spent 15 years of my life being a restaurant general manager. I've got some crazy stories, anyways, I was reminiscing lately and this story came up. Not even sure if this belongs here. Sorry for format, etc., I'm on mobile. Entitled Mom. Day, deaf employee. It was Mother's Day, one of the busiest days at my restaurant, quick service, self-seating, casual dining. Already ordered, had her buzzer, and was waiting for a table to open. She sees another family get up and immediately runs to the dirty table to reserve it. No big deal, right? Just need to bus it. Sees Da and begins yelling at her from behind, so Da doesn't notice anything at all. Continues to berate and follow Da. Now I understand that there is no sign saying my employee was deaf, but I believe a normal person would realize that something was off after getting no acknowledgement at all. I noticed something going on and walked over to the already irate and asked if I could help. Goes off about Da ignoring her requests to clean off the table and help her family sit down. I apologized to and explained that my employee didn't respond to her shouts because she is deaf and genuinely had no idea anyone was trying to communicate with her. I signaled one of my bussers to come clear the table while I continued speaking with This is when accused me of lying about my day. She demanded to know why I would hire someone who couldn't respond to her shouts and demands. I was getting very annoyed at this point. I explained that I didn't need to justify any of my hiring decisions and that I 100% stood behind my team. Began demanding that I fired Da. Said there was no use for a deaf person to work in a restaurant. This got me fuming. At this point, her table had been bussed, Her kids were sitting looking quite embarrassed, and her buzzer was going off informing her that her food was ready for pickup at the counter. To me, there was no reason to continue with M. Especially on such a busy day. I asked if she needed help picking up her food, and if not, I wished her a good meal and excused myself. M was not done with my team. She again saw to restocking some items and decided to prove me wrong. M approached Da and again began berating her using very offensive language. When Da turned to face M and realized that she was being yelled at, Da was frightened and confused. I never allow my employees to be harassed, and this was especially evil. I immediately had my expo counter pack the woman's order Togo, handed it to the woman and told her to leave. M called me AC *number T and told me she was going to contact corporate and have me and Da fired. Yeah, okay, like I've never heard that before. I escorted M and her poor children to the door and told M she was not welcome back in my restaurant. TL/DR, M verbally attacks deaf employee, not believing that she was actually deaf. Then demands she be fired for being deaf. Side note, in case you were worried about Da. Da was crying and so confused by this situation. I sat with her in my office and explained that this had nothing to do with her and she was an amazing employee, which was absolutely true. Da worked with me for over 5 years and was the first deaf employee to be a certified trainer for her position in the company. I still keep in contact with her and she is genuinely such a special person.